We have reached a point where we sort of established our goal for this week is to study triangles and look at various things that we can find. And we also said that there are 6 quantities that are fundamental to a triangle, 3 sides and 3 angles. So our goal is going to be to discover what relationships, if any, exist between these quantities, namely the 3 sides and the 3 angles. This is again a fundamental idea in mathematics is you identify an object, you identify its fundamental properties, and then the next goal is finding the relationship between those. Again, like all of mathematics is just finding relationships between objects. Okay, since we're dealing with quantities, it means they have to be measured, right? For measurements to make sense, we have to agree upon certain standards. Measuring length is something that you are familiar with. For like an extra, if you want to look up, you can look up the definition of 1 meter. What does 1 meter really mean? And you can even look at historically how the definition of 1 meter has changed. Measuring angles is something that we're going to spend some time on. So before we talk about measuring angle, what is an angle even? Now, firstly, to talk about angles, we need to have 2 lines. If you just have 1 line, you can talk about angles, but it's not very interesting. So when you have 2 lines, remember how there were 3 cases. I specifically look at 1 case, which is this one. When I do this, one way to establish a relationship between line 1 and line 2 is to measure how much do I need to rotate one of these to make it the other. Right? For example, in this case, if I have these 2 pencils here, one way to establish a relationship between them is to say that if I take this pencil and I turn it counterclockwise a certain distance, I'm going to get this other line. So that idea is captured by this angle. The angle between line 1 and 2 is a measure of how much do I need to rotate one of the lines so that it matches up exactly with the other line. Again, there can be more than 1 answers, thus there can be more than 1 angle. But that's the basic idea for why we even want to talk about angles. Okay. Now, since we've used the term rotation in the definition of angle, we want to think of the simplest object that associates with rotation. Here's a hint. Try and fill this out. If you try to complete the phrase rotating in a, what would you say here? Our first method of measuring angles is in degrees, which you are probably familiar with, but we're nevertheless going to go over it. We arbitrarily define one full rotation of a circle to equal 360 degrees, written 360 with this circular dot on the top. Emphasis on arbitrarily. There is no reason for one full rotation to be 360 degrees. We just have to give it a value. And the 360 is a remnant from the old Babylonian system, which is also why we have, 60 minutes and 60 seconds instead of it being hundreds. It's just historically around, so messing with it at this point would create a lot of confusion, so we just go along with it. So for example, this would be 0 degrees. Now right here, that would be half the circle. Now if a full circle is 360, half would be half of 360, which is 180. Now using the same reasoning, try and fill these out and convince yourself that those values make sense. Okay. Again, this is an arbitrary measure, right? Later on, we are going to learn another way of measuring angles, which is not arbitrary, it's more mathematical. Okay, so that's all about measurements and everything. Now we got to get back to what we started with, which is it's going to be a little activity with a triangle. So, which I'm going to cover in the next video, but you can prepare yourself by following these instructions. Draw any triangle and then you cut it out, and using it as a reference, cut out 2 more copies, so you have 3 total copies of the same triangle. Okay, so you can go ahead and do that, and I will do that too, so that when I make the next video I have those triangles with me. Alright, that's the end of this video.